You don't want this. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Mega Man X Command Mission. And I'm not gonna lie, when the game first came out, I was so hyped. Back in the 90s and early 2000s, the Mega Man X series was universally loved and praised for its innovative gameplay, cool characters, awesome music, and made fun of because of its terrible voice acting.
No, this isn't happening! There's no reason for me to go on. What? What am I fighting for?
Anyway, the X series revolves around an alternate Earth, where robots gain the ability to think and feel like human beings. This new type of robot, called Reploid, was first seen as a blessing for humans, but soon some Reploids started to feel like they have become the next evolutionary step and think of humans as an inferior race. You're smart, you know where this leads to. Lucky for us, not all Reploids think that way. Meet X and Zero, the main protagonists of the series. They work as maverick hunters, which means that they find and, if need be, destroy the most dangerous Reploids who might want to do a bit more than just spout hardcore Darwinist quotes. And you can imagine that an underlying theme during the whole X saga was always the tension between human and artificial life, and where evolution will lead the world to. Of course, you cannot go into too much detail about that topic during run-and-gun games like the X series, but with this RPG right here, Capcom had a real opportunity to flesh out the world, show how people and Reploids coexisted, or depict their underlying animosity and distrust between the two different species. And it sucks. Hard. Let's start right with the story. X, Zero, and newcomer Shadow get a mission from Colonel Redips, pictured here, to take out a Reploid group called the Rebellion, pictured here. Currently, the Rebellion holds an entire city, called Giga City, hostage and even managed to kick out all humans who live there. Giga City is relevant because it is the only distributor of Force Metal. With this special alloy, Reploids can become stronger, faster, more intelligent, but using too much of it may cause a nice Reploid to just go insane, which is called Maverick in this world, or just end up dead. And of course, we can't let a terrorist group have a thing that can be used for potentially evil deeds, right? So the team infiltrates Giga City and plan to hide out in an abandoned tower for the time being. But not before a giant boulder cuts off X from the rest of the group.
X, use those stairs. We'll meet up top.
Thank you, Shadow. You're the best. So the tower acts as your typical tutorial, and I gotta say, I do like the combat system. The most surprising aspect is that it isn't an action RPG and instead goes the turn-based combat route, which means that anybody who played Final Fantasy or Xenogears will feel right at home. Your characters as well as your enemies need to wait until it's their turn to act, and the order in which they're allowed to do so is determined by their speed stat. The game even provides a visual representation of this queue in the lower right corner. And of course there is no mana in the game since this world doesn't have any magic, but we get a sweet substitute in the form of weapon energy. Weapon energy is generated during fights. Every time your character acts, he or she gains a certain amount of it, and you can use it to power secondary weapon systems. Each character can equip 2 of these, and they have a wide array of effects. Some fire rockets at your enemies, while others put a certain status effect on them. You know, standard RPG stuff. However, weapon energy is good for one more thing though. Every character has a unique attack, which is called the action trigger. And the more energy you have, the more powerful the trigger will be. X, for example, has his signature charged shot, and you have to decide how much of your energy you will put into it, while Zero will chain attacks together based on your input during a certain time frame. I really do like the concept of weapon energy since it gives the fight some tactical depth. Do I wait and save the energy for an all-out attack, or do I try to weaken my enemy over the long run? Also, you can't heal with items since potions don't exist either. There are only 2 ways to heal up your group in combat. The first one is to use one of your energy tanks, which holds a certain amount of, well, energy. And each time you use them, you have to decide how many and for how much you want to heal your members. And of course they can go empty, so rationing is the point of the whole thing here. The second option arrives later in the game with a special character. Her action trigger has the ability to heal your team completely, but like I said, you need to generate allocate weapon energy for that first. I had to get used to this system, but once I got the hang of it, conserving my health wasn't a problem at all. And since this is an RPG, you can find shops in the world where you can buy several items. Stat boosts, new weapons, you name it. But apart from the fact that you can use force metal on your characters to give them some bonus stats, it just plays like any other RPG in that regard. My favorite things in a game are, however, Hyper Mode and Final Strike. Hyper Mode lets the character transform into an alternate, more powerful version of themselves, but the transformation only lasts for a few seconds. And the Final Strike is just awesome to watch and to execute. Once an enemy's health falls below a critical point, all 3 on-screen fighters will lay in on that future pile of scrap metal to deliver the killing blow. Interestingly enough, this works in boss battles too, and it just feels so satisfying to obliterate these smirking idiots with the combined force of Hyper Mode and Final Strike. Some of the enemies devise a certain strategy you have to break, or are outright immune to some type of damage, so you have to work around that. It spices the battles up and keeps them from getting boring. Also, one more plus, I never needed to grind to complete a mission. In this regard, the game is incredibly fair, since you will always have the right amount of levels, items, and equipment to deal with the situation at hand, which I am really thankful for, since I personally don't like unnecessary grinding. Ah shit, I realized I need to get back to the story now. The team regroups at the top of the tower, and here's where they meet the big bad rebellion leader, Epsilon. He doesn't attack right away though, and even asks before if X and Zero will not join his coup. And why not Shadow, you ask? Oh well, that's because he is the one who arranged this meeting, aka he's a traitor and led X and Zero into a trap. Shadow! How could you? Don't you remember all the stuff we've been through? That mission briefing? That falling boulder? And that vacation we spent in the Bahamas together? How could you? I loved you, man! I loved you. Seriously, they could have replaced Shadow with a bag of rice. I couldn't care less about the dude. No connection was established with this guy. I saw him for about 2 solid minutes, so this doesn't even hurt. And it's definitely not clever, it just comes off as lazy writing. Of course, X and Zero politely declined the invitation, and now knowing where everyone stands, Epsilon decides to get rid of the two. And despite being a top tier hunter, Zero gets kicked off the tower like a ragdoll, and X is forced to jump off the tower to escape capture. But from here on out, it just gets so much worse. X is found and rescued by the Resistance, which is the counter movement to the rebellion and the most confusing name to give your group when there's already a coup going on. And it just so happens that their leader, Chief R, has been captured by the rebellion, which gives you, what else, your first mission. Bust Chief R out of his cell. So there you go, fighting, oh cutscene. X encounters Ale, Chief R's right-hand man, and here the game tries to pull a Shadow again, in that it tries to make me care for characters I couldn't give a damn about. Ale here has a total screen time of about 76 seconds. Yes, I counted, and in this short time he's only good for 2 things. Handing X the key to Chief R's cell, which is for some reason implanted into his chest, and he has to rip it out. And then he's holding off some toy robots X could blast away in half a shot, but Ale decides to blow himself up to buy X some more time.
I will not let you pass!
No, Ale, why you? It should have been me. You were still so young and only 2 days away from retirement. It gets even weirder because Ale's death is actually a plot point that comes up one more time. This here is Spider, a bounty hunter who is tasked with taking X out. But as soon as Spider sees the remaining part of Ale in X's hand, he changes his mind and joins X. Because
Ale was my partner, back when I started bounty hunting. I goofed, and he got wasted for it.
So, after getting your first new group member and reinstalling the rebellion, I mean resistance, you go on more missions to dismantle the rebellion forces. Like in any RPG, more and more people will join your cause as you progress through the story. Some of them become supporting characters and some of them join your team directly. It's just a shame that I really don't feel much for any of them because apart from some exceptions, the rest of the characters strike me as bland and dare I say, dumb. In fact, I can only find 2 characters apart from X and Zero that are halfway developed. Here's Cinnamon, a Reploid who is directly targeted by the rebellion because she's a living force metal generator. Naturally, she doesn't want her powers to be abused, so she joins X, and that makes sense. Massimo here, our tank of the group, took over the mantle of his mentor who was a fighter for justice, and now wants to prove himself. Only problem is, he's a coward when you first meet him, but he learns to control his fear, which is a really nice character arc. But the biggest mishap has to be Axel, a fellow Maverick hunter just like X and Zero. His gimmick is that he can copy other Reploids, abilities and all. And during the not so good X games, it is established that these three are a team. Now, this tiny tidbit of information is crucial if you want to understand my upcoming criticism. Because as Axel states, he shows up in Giga City to...
I came to Giga City because I heard my shape-changing ability might have been invented here.
So with that personal interest in mind and the fact that they work the same cases, why wasn't he sent with X and Zero from the get-go? Instead, they gave us Shadow and his uninteresting betrayal right at the beginning of the game, which didn't faze me in the slightest because just like with Ale, I didn't know the guy. As I already mentioned, drama only works when you can empathize with a character. Take Spider for example. Even though his joining is handled badly, we get a sense of who he is during different cutscenes and tidbits during the game. Gradually, you get to like this easygoing dude. He is more or less the best developed character in the game. And then the team gets in an unwinnable situation and he sacrifices himself to buy the team time to get out. Using the same plot element twice in one game. How lazy can you get? Now, can we talk about my personal favorite character in the whole game? Because it's the antagonist. Epsilon is a wonderful villain because throughout the game we learn that he was constructed with Supra Force metal already built into him, making him in fact more powerful than the average Reploid. And his plan is to bomb the world with Force metal to enhance the rest of the Reploids too, which honestly sounds good on paper. But I already stated, not every Reploid can handle Force metal. Some of them will get killed when they come in contact with it or will become Maverick. But here's what's interesting. Epsilon is fully aware of that fact. But in order to bring Reploids to the next evolutional step, he is willing and able to play the villain.
For I know that this bridge must be crossed to achieve our ideal.
That's a villain with a point. He's not evil for the lulz, he's evil because he thinks that's the only way to progress. But is any of this, his ideology or his relationships, elaborated any further? Nope, he's just a crazy maverick, shoot him please. And just to add insult to injury, it turns out Epsilon wasn't even the real big bad. He was just a henchman for another sinister force in the background, and I never thought I would say this, but the actual reveal of who the real bad guy is so insultingly bad that I would have wished Sigma was in this game, who is pretty much behind everything in every X game. So if you still want to play this, then just skip to right here because I will spoil the ending now and I will tear it to pieces. The real bad guy is Colonel Redips, who also has the ability to shapeshift and infiltrated your group as Spider. He was there all along. Also, Redips is Spider backwards, which is just so phoned in it hurts, but okay. What does he want with all that power? What does he want with the Supra Force metal?
Stay in our place. Be friendly to all. Decade after decade. Indefinitely. Is this all Reploids will ever be? Someday, you'll see. We'll change the world.
Oh, just an asshole. Great. Obviously, there are some hot topics here that might have made the X series more attractive for a more mature audience, but alas, instead of focusing on these topics and utilizing the main characters to full effect, we get a cop-out with a side of stupid NPCs nobody wanted or needed. Moving on to something that is quite obvious, the graphics and the atmosphere. The game spots a cel shading look, and I don't care what you say, I think it works. This is at least one more thing the game did right. It gives the world a cartoony look, which suits the X universe better than expected. Especially X himself looks very gallant in this iteration, and have you seen his laser scarf? That thing is awesome, please keep it. Thanks to cel shading, all characters are vibrant and colorful. Even simple NPCs in the shopping mall stand out this way. Case in point, this little dog is a delight to look at. And now I want a Robodog. And I am afraid to tell you that these are the only sections where the atmosphere scores some points. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we are back to hating the game again. Like I said, thanks to the cell shading, this game has the potential to make the X universe look really unique. But whoever designed the levels didn't just drop the ball. They slammed it on the ground on purpose, and the force of impact propelled the poor object right out of the planet's atmosphere. The levels are bland, boring, and leave a lot to be desired. I for one desire some variety in the hallways I have to go through because they all look the same and are devoid of any objects. I wish I was kidding, but there is nothing interesting to look at. All levels, without exception, are made up of 3 different types of rooms, which are then just slapped together to form the impression of whatever the level is supposed to be. Take a look around and just off the top of your head, tell me where I am. No clue, right? Okay, let's change the room. Any ideas? Did you, by any chance, guess undersea prison? Because the only room I have left to show you is this boring corridor. And now remember the Storm Eagle stage from Mega Man X. The moment you see the screen, everything is clear. You are at an airport. No words needed. The theming of the levels, which is the strong point of almost every Mega Man X game, is simply missing here. So just to recap, the story is bogus, the atmosphere has at first glance a lot of potential but fails to do anything with it, and even Command Mission's attempts at minigames, something that many RPGs excel at, are underwhelming. During the main game you can find broken down robots which will be sent to your base once you discovered them. Once repaired, you can pack 3 of them into a scout team which will scavenge an already visited area for valuable items. Now what's really cool is that every robot has its own strengths and weaknesses and are classified as fighting robots or intelligence robots, and based on the composition, your results and the loot they bring back home varies. They even level up when they come back without getting destroyed. But here's the downside. All you really do is compose a team, send them somewhere, and then, after a while, you go back to your hideout and either they're back yet or not. So yes, this minigame consists entirely of waiting. There's one more thing I want to talk about. Once you beat the game, you will unlock a new area which holds the biggest and strongest enemies in the game, and yes, you get a reward if you beat them all, but that notion is pointless because there's no boss left to fight with that reward. With that said, I think it's time for the final word. Mega Man X Command Mission is an okay game. Not best, not the worst, but what makes me furious is the awful writing and the crappy level design. However, if you want to learn the basic mechanics of the JRPG genre, then go ahead and play it. It nails the by now traditional turn-based battle system and even mixes in some innovative ideas. But everything around this battle system just feels like a big miss. Just like X himself, this game has limitless potential, but unlike X, it fails to realize it.